Historically, much of my photography involved the use of a tripod, and I'd often be seen charging around with this camera bag weighing 9.2 kilograms on my back, whilst carrying a mid-sized tripod weighing 1.75 kilograms in one hand. But when I returned to film photography, I went for a slightly leaner approach, often carrying this smaller bag weighing a mere 4.5 kilograms. As I was generally taking the camera along just in case I saw something that I wanted to photograph, rather than heading out specifically to take photographs, carrying a tripod as well seemed like a bit of overkill, and my existing tripods all seemed a bit on the large side to carry strapped to my backpack. But over and over again I would find myself in situations where a tripod would have been really handy to get the shot that I wanted, so I started thinking about getting a small, lightweight travel tripod, knowing full well that they will always be a bit of a compromise compared to a bigger and heavier tripod. I even looked at one in a shop, which I really liked, until I asked for the price. I can only assume they were throwing in a free Leica camera or something similar. Anyway, the thought of getting a travel tripod was still running round in my head when Kentfaith got in touch asking me if I'd like to review one of their products. Kentfaith being the company behind the K&F Concept range of products. I was familiar with their stuff, having already bought lens adapters, filters and even lens cloths, all of which I'd been very happy with. We chatted for a while and I said that I was looking for a compact lightweight tripod, and they said OK. So a couple of weeks later a box arrived containing this C225C0 tripod. That was a couple of months ago now, and I've taken the tripod out with me nearly every time I've been out with my cameras. So I'll start off by demonstrating the tripod and its features, then we can take a look at some of the shots taken using the tripod, many of which wouldn't have been possible without a tripod of some kind, and I'll finish off with my thoughts having used the tripod out in the field for a reasonable period of time. Just to clarify, Kentfaith aren't paying me to do this review, but I do get to keep the tripod. They haven't asked me to say anything specific about the tripod, beyond including the name in the title and description, along with tags to Kentfaith and K&F Concept. My thoughts will be my own, but naturally there could be some bias having received the tripod as a gift, so bear that in mind when watching this video. Right, onto the tripod. To give it the full title, it's a C225C0 plus BH-25, the first part being the tripod and the BH-25 referring to the ball head. The leg sections are made of carbon fibre, with the majority of the remaining hardware made of some form of aluminium. The fastenings appear to be made of stainless steel, judging by the magnet test, so the whole thing should stand up to getting wet without any problems. One of the reasons I went for this tripod was because of the twist-type leg locks. As a general rule I prefer lever locks, but to fit in the side pocket of my backpack, the twist locks are a little bit more compact, so that was a key consideration. The twist locks have a rubberized grip insert, more about those later in the video. One leg has a foam comfort grip, which is great when you're carrying the tripod, particularly on a cold day. That leg is also removable, should you wish to use it as a monopod. You can pop the ball head directly onto the leg, giving you a maximum height of just under 46 inches, or 1165mm. Or you can unscrew the hook from the base of the centre column, remove the column, and add that to the monopod, giving you a maximum height of just over 62 inches, or 1580mm. It was at this point that I realised that my crude background for filming this video was nowhere near big enough, so just imagine there is a plain white background and ignore all the clutter out to the sides. As a monopod it will work fine, although for my photography I rarely need a monopod, so I probably won't use that feature much. I wouldn't be inclined to use it as an extra long selfie stick, unless it was holding something pretty light, like an action camera, because you'd be putting strain in a direction that it wasn't really intended to get strain. And the thread at the bottom of the centre column is made of plastic, so I wouldn't want to put too much twisting force on that. I also wouldn't be inclined to use it as a trekking pole. I reckon if you stumbled you could break one of the lower leg sections, but I'm not planning to try out that theory. Minimum folded length is achieved by raising the centre column, releasing the leg angle locks and inverting the legs to give you a length just under 14 inches or about 350mm. If you keep the legs in their standard orientation, the minimum folded height is around 19 inches or 485mm. Maximum working height without raising the centre column is around 47 inches or 1200mm. Then with the first section raised, that increases to 54 inches or 1370mm, and with both centre sections raised, the maximum height is 60 inches or 1525mm. Having the centre sections fully extended, it does introduce a bit more potential wobble to the tripod, but I've taken shots like this one, which had a few seconds exposure, and the tripod nearly at full extension, without any obvious wobble. It might not be so great in strong winds though. As you might expect, the legs can be set to multiple angles. The middle angle is pretty wide, and maybe the bottom section of the legs is a bit thin to use with the tripod like this, so I'd probably retract the thinnest section to get a really stable platform for the camera. It was a setup like this that I used to use with one of my old tripods when up a windy mountain, with my camera bag attached to the hook at the bottom of the centre section for extra stability against the gusts of wind. The third angle is almost flat and can't really be used with all three legs because the centre column needs to be fully extended to clear the ground. Some tripods have a split centre column that allows you to drop the camera lower, which can be great for macro work, but if this centre column could split in the middle, you wouldn't be able to have the extra height gained by having the telescopic sections. As it is, the realistic minimum height can be achieved using the legs on the middle angle, and that gives you a height of about 13.5 inches, or 345mm. You can, of course, unscrew the hook, remove the centre column, and insert it upside down. That way you can get the camera very close to the ground, but depending on the camera you're using, it can be difficult or next to impossible to use some cameras upside down, so that's not one of my preferred setups. Being able to use unequal leg angles is extremely useful. For instance, there's been many a time when I'm shooting over a wall or something, where setting up the tripod on top of the wall would be a bit perilous because there's a big drop or even water on the other side. For those instances, I'll usually opt for keeping two legs extended down to the ground, while the third leg perches on top of the wall. This setup is much better for my nerves. The BH-25 ball head takes the now almost standard Arca Swiss style of quick release plates. It's got a bubble level should you need that for setting it up straight. The ball hasn't given me any cause for concern with the various SLR cameras that I tried out on it. In fact, for a relatively small ball, it seems to hold the camera really well. The other lock screw is for the panning section of the head. This works okay, but it does have a tendency to twist the position of the head into a slight angle as you do it up. I only really noticed this as an issue on one shot that I was setting up, and it was easily corrected by slightly readjusting the ball. The ball head attaches to the tripod using the standard 3/8 inch thread, so upgrading to another model would be easy if desired, but this one is plenty good enough for what I want. There's a 1/4 inch thread on the side of the leg collar section where you can insert something like a mount for a light or other accessory. I doubt I'll be using that, but it's there if needed. The feet are just some kind of soft plastic, fine for the sort of terrain where I'll be using this tripod, but they will skate around a bit if you set the tripod up on a smooth floor. The maximum stated load for the tripod is 8 kilograms. I haven't tested this, I've probably only used it up to about a couple of kilograms or so, and it's been fine for my requirements. The tripod, complete with the ball head, weighs in at 1 kilogram, which is light enough for me not to worry about the additional weight when strapping it to the side of my backpack. It came with a carry case, which I do use when throwing it in the back of the car just to protect it from scratches, but when I'm out with the camera the empty bag stays in the car. The price appears to be just under the £100 mark. The Kentfaith website shows this as a heavily discounted price, but it's been at that price all the time I've been looking, and it's also about £99 on Amazon, so I guess that's the price for the time being. Hopefully that covers most of the features, so next we'll take a look at a few of the shots taken using the tripod. The majority of these were taken at speeds well below those that you could handhold. The shots that you've just been looking at were taken with my Casino CSL on Kodak Gold film, and also my Voigtlander Bessa 1 on Kodak Gold for the colour and Fomapan 100 for the black and white shots. For exposures over half a second on the Fomapan, you need to adjust the exposure for reciprocity failure. I think the slowest metered exposure was something like 2 seconds, which adjusts to around 7 seconds once you've taken reciprocity failure into account. Kodak don't publish reciprocity failure charts for Kodak Gold, so I just used a generic figure. Anything over a 1 second exposure gets multiplied to a power of 1.34, so a metered exposure of 4 seconds adjusts to an actual exposure of about 6.5 seconds. Obviously the difference gets much bigger for longer exposures, but those were about the levels I was working at. I didn't use a timer, I just counted 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi and so on. Anyway, back to the tripod. I did have one small problem with it, which might not affect many people depending on how you transport it, but one day I went out and it was a bit colder and damper than the previous trips. It wasn't raining as such, but there was definitely mizzle. After I'd used the tripod a few times and it had been in the damp grass, the rubber grips on the leg locks started spinning round when you tightened the locks. I could still do them up enough to lock the legs, but when I put the tripod away on the side of my backpack, the locks weren't as tight as I'd usually do them. Now bear in mind that the pocket on my backpack has room for 2 legs, with the third sitting outside the pocket. I walked on, searching for my next shot, and when I next looked at the tripod, the bottom section of the exposed leg had come loose and was dangling. The thread was exposed to about this position, and if I carry on shaking the tripod as if I was walking, before too long, this happens. Now that could have been a bit of a disaster, but as it was, all was well, and once the rubber had warmed up in the house, it returned to its original grippiness. I reported back to Kentfaith about this issue, with a few suggestions, such as changing the rubber compound or engineering the leg locks with some sort of texture that would allow the rubber to grip better than on the smooth anodised finish. For cleaning and maintenance, I quite like the fact that the leg sections can easily be removed, but possibly having seen what could potentially happen, some sort of retention device within each leg section might be advantageous. I'm now a bit more careful to check that the locks on the exposed leg are good and tight when I put it into my bag. I also have the additional plan of simply removing the monopod and putting it in the pocket with the other 2 legs, thus eliminating the problem altogether. Overall, the tripod has done everything that I wanted. For a small tripod it can go surprisingly high. When I first got it I thought that I'll never use the second extension on the centre column, yet here's a shot of it in use and the column is more or less at its maximum height. The longest exposure I did was 10 seconds. It was actually supposed to be 5, but I got a bit distracted and only stopped after the 10th Mississippi. There's no signs of wobble, albeit that the tripod was fairly low for this shot. One of the best things I find when using a tripod is that I tend to compose my shots better, or at least my composition is less bad. I can concentrate a little more on whether the horizon is straight or wonky, and what demons are creeping into the edges of the frame. A big thank you to Kentfaith for supplying the tripod for this review. It's very much appreciated. You'll find links to their website down in the description should you wish to look at their products. Anyway, I think that about covers it for this video. If you've enjoyed watching, please like the video and maybe even subscribe to the channel, not forgetting to click on the bell icon so you get notifications when future videos are released. That's it for now, so thanks for watching and I'll see you in a future video.